Mercenaries and Minor Clans. You'll be dealing with both in droves in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Whether on the opposing side or your own, these units will make up the bulk of the fighting forces available to the kingdoms during times of war. Selling their sword for the highest bidder, they'll swap out to any kingdom that is willing to pay the most for their mercenary contract, including your own. In this video today, we're going to first cover the mercenaries in the game, how to get them, their stats, as well as when they're even useful. Then we'll close the video out by talking about minor clans, again, how to get access to their units and whether or not they'll be useful in your campaign. Hint, yes, they will. They extremely will be. You can quickly navigate to any topic that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And as always, guys, if you end up enjoying the content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Each one of those helps out any content creator you watch in a huge way to aid in combating the dreaded YouTube algorithm and to feeding my puppy's boundless treat addiction. Well, let's get started on our Mercenaries and Minor Clan guide for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Going into Mercenaries first, let's go ahead and bring up the encyclopedia, and let's go into the Troops section. I don't know how to bring this up on console, I apologize, but you've got two different types of mercenaries. You see on the left side here, you see culture, you'll see occupation, and you'll see type. Let's go ahead for occupation and select mercenary. Now these are the quote-unquote tried and true mercenaries. I don't know why I put quote-unquotes in there, but it happened. Bunny ears were made. And you've got three different types of mercenaries. Eastern mercenaries, which includes your sellsword, your mercenary maceman, into your elite mercenary maceman, as well as your outrider or your veteran outrider, whichever branch you want to go into. You have Western mercenaries, which go into a pike or a heavy crossbow. And then you have got your sword sisters. And sword sisters are actually pretty good. They go down into your gallant sword sister or veteran sword sister. And these are basically, I'd say, empire kind of focused characters. So you're probably kind of thinking to yourself, hey, where do we find them? And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But there's another type of mercenary that isn't really a mercenary. It's the Caravan Guard for each respective faction. So if I go ahead and click on Eleftheroi Caravan Guard, I'll see these guys. There's the armed traders as well. These guys are usually the foot soldiers that are alongside the caravans, and then the Caravan Guard are the mounted soldiers alongside the caravan, and there's usually a caravan master. These guys you can find the same ways you're going to be able to find mercenaries. Again, we'll go over that in just a little second. And they're actually, unfortunately, if I click Caravan Guard, it only shows me the Caravan Guard, but there's actually a veteran Caravan Guard. Caravan Guard right here, and you can see he's actually very, very good. He's a really cool soldier. So we'll review those guys in their own section in this video, but these are the two different types of mercenaries I wanted to bring up: the Caravan Guards or the actual true mercenaries within the game. I think for all intents and purposes, you should kind of look more to the mercenaries if you're thinking about the term mercenary, but it is worth mentioning that you can recruit the ladder units in the same fashion, and attacking caravans is also a great way to get them. So let's actually go into recruiting these before we go into reviews on them. So we're over here at Emprela, and all we need to simply do to recruit any of the type of mercenaries we both just talked about is go to the Tavern District. Now you can see right here that says recruit 7 sellswords. Remember, sellswords are the Eastern mercenary type. It does not mean, and the mercenaries used to have a bunch of different distinctions. They've been standardized to either Western, Eastern, or sword sister. And actually the last, I think it's 1.9 that patch happened. And this doesn't mean anything about their geographical availability. This is over here in the Empire, and those are sellswords. By that same stretch, I'm using the cheat console to quickly warp to show some of this stuff off. It makes the intent of this video easier. We'll go to Ortengard, which is the furthest east location. Go to the Tavern District, again, furthest east location, just to kind of, okay, I guess Odok just barely is further east. But go to the Tavern District here, and we have 2 gallant sword sisters. And all you do to recruit them is simply click this. And there are now in my party. And I've already recruited some other ones. This is the cheat console, so ignore this on the left here. You can see that they're right over here. They've got quite a bit of a daily wage for a tier 5 unit, comparable, of course, to a tier 5 standard military unit. They have 6 more. That's kind of the trade-off here, right? Also, It doesn't actually, I thought I would have had an effect on things. But you have your different mercenaries would just be available right here. You've got them, and then you can kind of level them up as well. It's worth noting, though, as we kind of warp around here, we'll go to Poros real quick. Go to Tavern District. Okay, here's 4 hired pikes. That's the Western mercenary. Let's go over to the west. Let's go over here. And let's go into this Tavern District. Now, this is where things get spicy. This is the Volandian Caravan Guard. So, while the mercenaries are not geographically bound, right? They can be anywhere. The specific kingdom Caravan Guard mercenaries are geographically bound. You will find the Volandian Caravan Guards in the Volandian territories. And from what I have experienced, that is a Volandian cultural territory, meaning Jacqueline is a Volandian culture. See right there, it says owner, clan, de Aramonk, faction, Volandia, culture, Volandia. If I go over here to Ortesia, it will say culture, empire. So if I were to go here, go to the Tavern District, Outriders are the Eastern mercenaries. This won't ever show me Volandian mercenaries, even if this is a captured Volandian faction held location. So those are how you would get access to your mercenaries. You'll find them across the map by simply going to the Tavern District. It used to be that you could also find other things through here. There is a mod that will add minor clansmen recruitable through the Tavern District. I'm not sure if that's been updated recently, but that's a quick way to get minor clansmen, and we're going to go into how to recruit them in their own scenario. The other way you would get access to any of these units would be to simply, let's go ahead and, for the sake of the video, we'll go over here. And hey, hand over your goods. So be it. Attack. I'll send troops for the intentions of this video. And here we go. We have these guys as prisoners now. And we can just simply let them convert in our prisoner pool. We'd put them down here. We'd walk around a bunch. And they would convert for us. We would just go like this. And eventually, over time, they would be like, you know what? Hey, you strike a good bargain. It's like Beauty and the Beast. They got full-on Stockholm Syndrome and they jump onto your side. So that's one of the other ways you would recruit both the Caravan Guard as well as any mercenaries that are being being used by any faction you're at war with, either as a vassal or as a mercenary yourself. And it is worth noting that your clan, until you actually join a faction, you are considered a minor clan. You are considered a mercenary clan. So we are right there, Valdor. So Constantine Valdor from Warhammer 40k, for those that know him. So it's worth noting those things just to kind of, for whatever reason, hey, that's you. So now that we've gone into how to get mercenaries and everything, let us quickly dive into it won't be quick. Let's dive into a review on the mercenary trees. Starting with the Western mercenaries, we have the hired spear into pike, crossbow, elite pike, and hired crossbow. So by and large, I think that the Western mercenaries are not really worth it. As you go down to the pike, you lose your shield. And then to the elite pike, you get a pretty armored guy, right? Mail shirt, leather gloves, strap mail chausses, a pretty damn good helmet, and you've got 130 two-handed because you have a ridged arming sword and then a a fine pike, which is a two-handed polearm. You know, not having actual any two-handed weapon. I think there's one kit with it. Nope, not a single kit has two-handed weapons on this guy. But he's got one-handed polearm and athletics, so he has quite a wide range of skills. And if we compare this to the Volandian pike, we get a character that has 130, 130, 130. And again, has skill in a weapon he doesn't have access to. So I guess it's like a little too similar to the Volandian pikeman. But if I'm just taking a look at these two units by comparison, I would rather take the Volandian pikeman for its higher availability. It's still a struggle to go through all this route down to the pikeman. But going from a spear into a pike is not as worth it for me because the Volandian pikeman has better armor all the way around. I think the helmet might be a little bit less. He still has a pike and still has a sword. He does have a little bit less one-handed, but it's worth noting here that, again, higher availability, and this. His wage is 12 ducats, I don't know what it is, a day. I'm paying 6 more for the hired elite pike. So in a bind, you can't recruit these guys in a large enough quantity to offset the wage increase for a really, like, this is going to give me what, 20 more one-handed skill. I'm going to have to pay 6 more a day. And if I hire 10 more, that's 60 more a day for them. So I think that's kind of the issue with the hired elite pike, is that its wage increase does not justify its pretty nice set of skills, its lack of equipment to take advantage of those skills, and its lower availability, right? You're only going to be able to get these guys either by prisoners or by a tavern district that has spears or pikes that are going to level up into elite pikes. So I think that's going to be kind of the theme of what we're talking about here today is, does the wage increase justify seeking these soldiers out? And I think that when we jump over here to the elite hired crossbow, we'll find that that's kind of always going to be the case. Comparing the elite hired crossbow to the Vlandian sharpshooter, we have a unit that's almost exactly the same. They have got 10 less one-handed and crossbow, but you can see that they also have 10 more athletics. So these guys have 120, 140, 140. These have 130 all the way down. So you can kind of take that as it is. And they have almost the same exact setup. The sharpshooter, though, has just slightly worse armor. Yeah, 27, 12, 14 versus the 25, 14, 14. It's, like I said, it's completely negligible at that point. They have gloves, though, so it gives them some more armor, and they've got better boots. And on top of it, they have heavy bolts. So they get more damage out of their arrows bolts than these guys who just have the light bolts. So again, the elite hired crossbow doesn't really kind of fall for me as a unit I want to spend time recruiting. Maybe in a pinch, I'm at the early game and I just want to get some quick high damage crossbowmen for maybe a siege or a bandit hideout. That's definitely the use case you're going to find with the Western mercenaries, is a quick, help me with a hideout, help me with a quest. I got to do something and I need some disposable troops. This is when you're going to take advantage of them. Or you're head of an army and you're going en route to siege something and you just kind of need some higher level units. You can stop at every single town on the way there to bring these people into your army. But outside of that, I think the Western mercenaries are pretty lackluster. Let's move over to the Eastern mercenaries now. For the Eastern mercenaries, we actually have some pretty cool use cases, actually. I don't know why I said actually twice, but I'm just going to roll with that from here on. So to start us off, we have the sellsword, which is just the tier 1. And I like the sellsword on its own. The skill set's pretty wild here. We're going to have 70 athletics, one-handed and throwing. And we have a pretty interesting use of jagged javelins, step light mace, and curved round shield. So in the early portions of the game, when I'm doing a lot of bandit bases, I find the sellsword and the subsequent line of the sellsword to actually be very useful. I can use these mercenary macemen to use their Eastern heavy mace here, or the Fullard light mace, to go through any of the bandit hideouts with me and go and clobber the bandits. Because remember, if you look at my video on how to make money, you take those bandits who are now prisoners, because using blunt weapons increases the chance of prisoners versus outright killing them. You take those prisoners and you deliver them to the needs manual laborers quests, and you get basically a 2-for-1. You do the defeat a bandit hideout quest and you get the manual laborers quest, and for the higher end bandits you get quite a bit of money. So the sellsword into the elite mercenary maceman actually has a very great use case with that in mind. And you can use them in the early portions of the game, recruit them for the bandit hideout, and then ditch them. They're not that expensive, especially the sellswords are pretty inexpensive and you get quite a few. You can get something like 7 for 400, 500, 600 gold. That's a pretty good amount, and 7's pretty much all you need. If you have yourself, if you're playing the campaign, then you can have your brother plus another companion, or if you're playing the sandbox, you have yourself plus 2 other companions. With 7 sellswords, that's a bunch of maces. You just go to town clobbering things and you're good to go. And then, just like I said, sell them or ditch them from your party. I also find them kind of useful, the sellsword itself, in mid to late game, just as a kind of nice throwing weapon infantry that you can use. If in the late game it's easy to get these guys for higher quantities and lower amounts of money, that I'm just cool. I'm going to put you into your own unit and have you just throw javelins and die off in your own respective glorified way. So I definitely think that the Mercenary Macemen to the Elite Mercenary Macemen have a really cool use case in helping you kind of jettison forward monetarily or financially. I think in an actual engagement, though, they can suffer a little bit. They have pretty low armor. They have at least a shield, though, so they can actually fight and stay up close and personal. And the nice thing, too, about Macemen is that they can fight into heavily armored things better than things that don't have maces. Maces do more damage to that heavier armor, but like I said, they just have very, very pitiful armor. So you really want to kind of mix them in with your force. So I find that to be useful, because if I'm taking a look at my Aserai veteran infantry, these guys are great, and they've got their long Kasakaras, and they're really good. 130, 160 one-handed, 130, so they're really solid. They throw weapons, they've got shields on their backs. Maybe they're going to suffer a little bit when it comes to heavy armor, even though their sword has a super high long length. And in my weapon tier or infantry tier video, I put these guys as S tier. But mixing some of these guys in can be nice to just kind of get some mace damage. But again, you do have to deal with that wage difference. So this is why I say with the mercenaries, I feel like it really comes down to using them in limited both use cases and limited time. So you're using them for just a quick quest or two and then kind of getting rid of them. So you're not paying exorbitantly this 18 gold daily wage, which is almost up there with a lot of companions. So I'd rather just go with a 7 wage guy here with the sellsword. Now the outrider into the veteran outrider with 130 bow, 130 riding, 150 one-handed isn't terrible. They also have 80 polearm. They have an interesting armor set with 2 with the Huskarl's Halberg. They have a nice sword. They have the step warbow, which is also a pretty great warbow, and they have a good mount. So they have a lot of really great uses, but if I'm comparing this to what is this? The Heavy Horse Archer. The Heavy Horse Archer, which is also tier 5, is 6 less in gold. I'm getting no polearm here, but I'm getting more arrows, and I can use these characters as an actual horse archer. This guy has just 1 step arrow, set of step arrows, which is still 24 arrows, which is great. I would just rather use heavy horse archers, or even just horse archers, and get far more for far less. Like at wage of 8 gold a day on the Khazad horse archer, you are 10 gold less than the veteran outrider, and you're getting just as much, if not more, use out of them, because you're being able to just have a lot more arrows downrange. The fact that this is a wide-ranging unit across bow, riding, one-handed, and polearm is cool and all. And I honestly feel too, like when it comes to horse archers, more horse archers is always better than not, but I just don't want to pay the wage on these guys to justify something that can really be done just as well, if not better, by a dedicated horse archer from a specific faction. Either the heavy Mamluk or the Khazad horse or heavy horse archer. Our last set of mercenaries is the Sisters, the Sword Sisters. And this is a harken back to Warband, right? And they're a pretty cool unit. I think that honestly they win a little bit alone on the fact that that's kind of like a really cool nostalgic flavor point, is that you get the Sword Sisters brought into Mountain Blade Bannerlord. So I think it's kind of goes without saying that a lot of people would just prefer to have these in their army from a flavor standpoint. And to be totally honest, they're pretty cool. The Gallant Sword Sister on a horse is actually pretty awesome. It's shooting a light crossbow, and it has bolts, which do quite a bit of damage. It has 150 crossbow, 120 one-handed, and 130 riding. It's actually a pretty solid unit. It does have that 18 gold wage, but I think if you're going hard on the paint on Sword Sisters, it's because you want Sword Sisters in your army. There's nothing comparable to these in a standard army, because there's no crossbow mounted units in anyone's standard army. Caravan Guards, yes, but no one's standard army has these. So it is a really cool way to kind of fill your army with this specific style of horse archer being crossbow focused. And I think if that's what you want, you're going to pay the premium of the 6 more wage, and you're going to roll with it. They have decent enough armor. The leather armor here is not amazing, but if you're using them as a horse archer unit, then it's okay. You know, it plays for what it is. On the other side of the board, we have the Veteran Sword Sister, which swaps the riding for athletics to have 130, 130, 150. And you can compare these to Imperial Sergeant Crossbowmen, and they're just about the same. The Sergeant Crossbowmen have way better armor. They've got 20 less, or is it 20? Or we're going to find out together. I think it's 20 less crossbow. Yeah, 20 less crossbow on these guys. And they also have heavy quarrels and hickory crossbows versus the heavy crossbow, weapon tier 4, and the bolts, which have 1 more damage, I believe. They also have a nice wide heater shield. That's one thing worth noting with all 3 of these, is they have a really nice shield on their back. So I think that the rule of cool kind of reigns true with the Sword Sister, and if you want these in your army, you're going to make a mercenary pocket of badass women in your army. If you want it, they're there. Do they fill a role above anyone else in other standard armies? No, I think the Veteran Sword Sister loses out to the higher survivability and higher availability of the Imperial Sergeant Crossbowman. The only one, though, here is the Gallant Sword Sister, which, again, like I said, is not in existence in any other Standard Kingdom army. So if you want those men and crossbow, you're going to want to go with your Sword Sisters. Let's move over quickly to some Caravan Guards before we talk about the Minor Clans. So the Caravan Guards are very interesting units, and we're going to talk about the Eleftheroi Caravan Guard, and this will apply to every faction's Caravan Guards. It's worth noting that when you hover over this, even in the encyclopedia, it's going to tell you how much experience is required to upgrade the unit. Notice that this does not say that. It does not say how much experience is required. They have nice two-handed at 150 for a tier 4 unit, which is exceptional. 110 riding, 110 one-handed, lower armor, great executioner axe with a Flissa as well as a Adarja, which is a really nice shield. Might be a Darga, I don't know. But take a look at this. We're going to go back to the party because I actually have them in my party. And you can see that there is no ability to upgrade them. You cannot upgrade them to their veteran counterpart, which is unfortunate because if I show you their veteran counterpart, it's amazing. It's really good. It's exactly a copy of, well, I can just look over here on the other side of the list, the Mamluk Heavy Cav. 130 riding, 130 bow, 130 one-handed with almost the exact same weapons. Step recurve bow, a cascara, a piercing arrows. So you get a really strong soldier in the veteran Caravan Guards. But the reliability and the capability to get them onto your army is really, really minimal. The best way to do it is, of course, like I've said, go and attack the actual caravans and try and get them as prisoners, because you cannot get Volandian Caravan Guards and upgrade them into Volandian veterans. You have to get them separately. So it's worth noting, each Caravan Guard is quite good. Look at this. Volandian Caravan Guard has got 160 polearm, 100 and 110 riding and one-handed with a mail shirt on here, a tail-tipped, a tall-tipped long spear. These are really strong, good units. This guy too has the rough brigandine, which is a really good set of armor. Look at this stats: 130, 130, 160 at tier 5. Let's take a look at the Volandian Banner Knight, which is tier 6. Let's go to champion. Actually, it's a Volandian champion with slightly worse armor. So basically, every single veteran Caravan Guard, if you go ahead and type in here veteran guard, Caravan Caravan, you'll get each army's veteran counterpart, and this guy is really good. He's on par with the Cataphract veteran Caravan. Look at the Sturgian. He's on par with the Drusnik, and it also has throwing added into him. So you get really good veteran Caravan Guards. I think probably my favorite one is the Eleftheroi and Volandian, because the Volandian is basically a champion, and the Eleftheroi one is a heavy Mamluk archer, heavy Mameluke guard, and their wage is about the same. So the problem is that they're a very limited availability because you have to either recruit them or find them in caravans, which is the latter being the easier. And their weapon stats, their skills, their weapon loadouts and everything like that is the same as if you were pretty much just to do it standard through your own military. So that's the kind of review I have on the Caravan Guards, and I wanted to bring them up in case someone said like, hey, well, what about the Caravan Guards? It was worth kind of talking about them here in the mercenary section for continuity's sake. Well, let's now pivot over to some minor clans. For minor clans, things are going to be a little bit different. Let's jump back into the encyclopedia and let's click on clans. Click on type at the top here, and we'll click minor. Now remember, you are a minor clan. You are considered a minor clan mercenary until you become a vassal of a faction. But these are all the minor clans in the game. And you can see that, you know, these guys over here, these are more Eleftheroi based. Maybe the company of the Golden Bear is more Vlandian based. And you can see their culture. Now this is important here because this is going to help you find where their troops are in the encyclopedia. So let's take a look here for Vlandia. This is going to show us Brotherhood of the Woods and Company of the Golden Boar. Did I say bear earlier? Yeah, Golden Boar. Or if I want to find the Skolderbroda, it would be Nord. There you go. Darshi over here would be the Ghilman. So back end would be the Forest people. So you can find that the Battanians would be Wolfskins, that's me. So your culture of your main character is assumed the culture of your minor clan. So Empire here, you see the Eleftheroi, I'm sorry, it's Elefthero, I believe. The Embers of the Flame, the Hidden Hand, and the Legions of the Betrayed. So you have quite a few for the Empire. Khazad here has the Karakhergit, all these Sturgia, I think is lake rats. So you've got all these different types. So that makes finding them, the Eleftheroi have the Jawwal and the Zilal. So you can find them pretty easily by then going back, going to troops, and we're gonna go ahead and click, let's go with Empire. And then you can see in here, Imperial Archer, Armed Trader, all this. I believe if I click Soldier, Mercenary change that too? Bandit, no, okay. Soldier, I can then click Blaze. Okay, well, these are the guys from the Order of this one. From the Embers of the Flame. There it is. It was like Order of the Hidden Flame is what I thought it was. So Embers of the Flame are those. And it doesn't tell you anywhere here. Sometimes it might say in their description up here, the Embers of the Flame are the descendants of the rebel movement that rose up nearly a century ago, and it talks about how it's empire based. Or the Legion of the Betrayed is a lot of the old military before the empire fractured. All these things. So when I go back here to troops, go click on soldiers and empire, we're gonna go find the Hastati. So the Hastati into the Principes is how I pronounce it. Church Latin, as it were. To the Triarii, you have these units. So that's how you would find them in the encyclopedia. But the real question is, how do you find them in the game? Well, finding the minor clan troops is a little bit trickier than the mercenaries. We're going to go back to the encyclopedia. We're going to go home. We're going to go to clans, and I'm going to look up the Legion of the Betrayed. Let me take these filters off, and we'll go through it completely naked, like myself right now making this video. Type minor, Empire, culture, and then name Legion of the Betrayed. Click on this and we have our guys. Now we've got the leader and then his 3 members, or however many members he has. So we're going to click on Jutheros here. And he is last seen near Amitatis up here in the upper right corner. I have a mod on that's called the Extended Encyclopedia mod, and this shows me all of his equipment and everything. If you don't have this on your screen, especially if you're on console, don't worry, that's okay. It's just a mod. So I click this up here, Amitatis, and here's Amitatis. We click on track, not to be confused with the hit song Rock Me Amadeus. We click that, and we're good to go. We can see him right there. He's right here on the map, and I have to talk to him.
That's close enough now.
And he has huge teeth. And I tell him, like, you know what, dude? We're gonna go throw fisticuffs right here. So we fight. I send troops because this is a video and I want to speed through this portion. I kill him. And we have a victory. So, what happens here is that now I'm at war with him. We're at war with that faction. We tell him, hey, you know what? You're free to go. And that we're going to explain that more later in the video. And I have all of these prisoners, namely, of course, his troops in usually descending order from 2 to 3 to 4 in their tier rankage of their troops. So I put them in, they're now my prisoners, and I'm just going to simply convert them over time. That is how you get access to troops in the minor clans. The other way would be to, if the minor clan has joined a faction as a mercenary and you're at war with that faction as a mercenary or vassal on the opposing side, you would fight them, you would win, and you would hopefully get some of their troops as prisoners. That's the only way to get minor clansmen troops. Now, this can change once you have a kingdom and you bring them in as vassals and all these other things, but still, that is the way you would get them at the beginning of the game. And if you're, or even the middle portion of the game. And if you are the beginning portion of the game, fighting some of these soldiers is actually a very good way to earn a lot of renown, a lot of really good money, get a lot of great loot, and you can ransom these prisoners to make even more money. And it's a really great way to bolster your early game by fighting, say, Clan, Empire, Hidden Hand, which has some of the weakest soldiers because all they do is throw knives at you, like cutlery. So that is how you get access to the minor clansmen. Let's go through a review of them because some of them are good, most of them are terrible. So let's go through that. Speaking of which, our first review is going to be the Hidden Hand, and their units are garbage. They're terrible. The Hidden Hand, the Hidden Pawn into the Hidden Hand into the Puppeteer, they've got okay armor, but they're throwing knives, and the knives suck. They're not good. They don't do a great amount of damage. Any other throwing weapon does way more damage, and they just throw these in mass to you. So if you just have your faction start in shield wall, they're going to exhaust all of their knives, which is 9 total knives, I think, through these, plus any kind of bonuses from throwing and their captaincies or whatever like that. And then they just kind of will run at you with their swords and die. They're super easy to kill. And at that, it's kind of how we're going to talk about these units, because by and large, the minor clans used to be very, very good. They used to be really strong up until like patch 1.3, 1.4 during early access, which changed all of their gear and changed their skill sets. The Triarii used to be the very best infantry soldier in the game, but now it is not the case. The minor clans top out at tier 4. And to be fair, the soldiers for other tier 4 comparable soldiers, if they're like, we'll take a look at the Triarii and the Imperial Veteran Infantryman, it's like almost the same exact soldier and the same exact wage. So if you want flavor, you want a little bit more spice in your army, then get any minor clansmen because they have the wage that is comparable to their tier. So it doesn't make them like mercenaries where you're paying exorbitant sums for a unit that maybe is kind of like laterally better than another unit, like, you know, sideways adjacent at best. So it's nice to see that you can actually use the minor clansmen in your army, but by and large, I would just pass up on the Hidden Hand. And we're going to go through these pretty quickly because there are a lot of clans, so bear with me. Let's kind of speed through these. Embers of the Flame is another Imperial faction that is also not too great. The Spark, Into the Flame, Into the Blaze, all have the same thing. It's like a monastic order, so they have these just scholar robes, so they can just be kind of cut to ribbons. Be a little bit wary with them because they have 100 athletics and 130 one-handed. They are just super fast because they've got no armor weighing them down, so they will run and surround you and actually do a lot of damage. So if you're fighting against them, keep them in mind, because any minor clan you're attacking will have them in mass. You will probably not have them in mass, and as a result, they're not going to be a great kind of complement to your military. So I would pass up on Blaze because they're just not Blaze 420, dude. Because they're just not great soldiers in the constraints of a standard military construct. If you look at them from a minor clan who's just throwing like 100 of these guys at you, like I said, be careful because they're track stars and they'll wrap around you and do a lot of damage. But also pretty easy to just kind of deal with. Into the Eleftheroi, we have another unit, which is, I think it means like free peoples, and it's a Sturgian Imperial minor clan mercenary thing. It's a pretty interesting kind of little lore for them. But the recruit into the expert into the veteran. The veteran used to have amazing armor and used to be really strong, but unfortunately is not the case anymore. With 100 riding, one-handed, and polearm, almost any other tier 4 cavalry just kind of outmatches it, especially when it comes to armor. They just have no real staying power. They're limited availability. Fighting against them is kind of cool because you're fighting against this like almost Riders of Rohan faction that are just going to send a bunch of just cavalry at you, but the kind of caveat here is that the cavalry is all terrible and you can just kind of mince through them quickly. So if you get in a fight with them, just pretty much form a square and have your archers in loose formation, and you'll just kind of pluck them apart very quickly. I would never recommend the Eleftheroi anymore. They used to be good, but they just can't hold a flame to anything when it comes to cavalry nowadays. On to the Legion of the Betrayed, which is now not as good as it used to be, but it's still a very good minor faction, because up to the Principes or Principes, whichever way you want to, if you're church or non-church Latin, they're great because they've got good enough armor, and they've got a sword, a shield, and a throwing weapon, and they use it. Even the Hastati are great. They're only tier 2, but I mean, they're not going to be any more wage than your rest of your faction. Same thing with these guys. Into the Triarii, which are the same kind of style of unit as your Legionary, but at the wage and skill set of a veteran infantryman. They have a lot of really good armor here. The luxury lamellar vest over leather is about comparable to your veteran infantryman from the Empire, but this, the Legionary mail, is better than their armor, and they have a similar weapon set to the Legionary. So they're actually they're still good. They're not amazing like they used to be. They used to have like 160 one-handed ones. They had that throwing weapons. They didn't have the pilum, and they had like 160 athletics. They were really, 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 really strong back in the day, but they're still totally viable, really cool looking, flavorful units to bring into any Empire army that you've got. Even if you don't have the Empire army, I think these are one of the best minor clans because they're actually viable within your military. So the Legion of the Betrayed has great soldiers. Transitioning to Valandia, we have the Brotherhood of the Woods with the Recruit Forester, Expert Forester, into the Veteran Forester. Now this gives us access to an archer with 110 athletics and 100 bow skill and 90 one-handed at tier 4, with the Woodland Longbow and access to 2 sets of arrows. Overall, I think they're a really solid archer because they do give access to 100 bow skill. That's pretty standard fare at tier 4, a little bit above average athletics, but below average one-handed. They have 2 sets of arrows, which are nice, and they have a longbow, which is a nice tier 5 bow with decent enough body armor. And like, it's nothing crazy, but again, it's an archer. So it's worth saying that the viability of archers in this is a little bit better than, say, any kind of foot soldier or cavalry, because all they have to do is just shoot things. So that is a little bit nicer. If I were to choose, though, I would probably go with the, not foresters, but it's the like Battanian Valandian hybrid with the arboreals, because there's better armor and they're about in the same location. Remember, like I keep saying, each one of these guys is going to be within their cultural location or the combined locations they maybe also pull from. So this would be Battania and Valandia within the first months of your game. So I would pass up on the Forester for the Arboreals, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. With the Order of the Golden Boar, we get the Boar Novice, Veteran, and then Champion. And these guys are pretty nice in that they match almost like a carbon copy of your Valandian crossbowman progression. From the Levy crossbowman over to the Hardened crossbowman, it's almost exactly the same armor and weapon loadout. So if you want just more and different looking soldiers, just put the Boars into your army, because you're not going to lose out. They're just going to have the same wage. They're just going to have the same amount to upgrade. They'll have the same exact skills, and you won't. And again, you're just kind of adding a little bit of spice and variety to your military. These aren't like bandits. Remember, bandits have hits on your morale, and you have to have certain leadership skills to upgrade them. These are just pretty much different looking soldiers of your own faction. So the Boar ones are totally viable, and they're pretty decent if you just want more crossbowmen in your Valandian military, or if you're fighting and you're not fighting as Valandia and you want to bring some just nice, good tier 1, tier 3, and tier 4 crossbowmen into your military, you've got access here. It is worth noting too that the Novice is tier 1, not tier 2 like the Valandian Levy crossbowmen would be. With Battania and the Wolfskins, you get access to some really good archers in the Young Wolf, into the Seasoned Wolf, and finally the Chosen Wolf. And with Battania, you get no archers in the non-noble line, right? The Fian is a noble line archer. You'll have to get them from the noble line notables. And with that, the Chosen Wolf, you can pull these wolf skins in the lands of Britannia by attacking them in the first couple handfuls of days of your game, first month or two of your game. And you get a really, really strong archer here. The Chosen Wolf has tier 4 wages with tier 5 bow skill. 130 bow skill coming in with the Woodland Yew bow, which isn't amazing, but it is a longbow, barbed arrows, and a one-handed bearded axe, which I think is, yeah, that's the only option he has. The downside of these guys is they've got pretty much no armor. They are archers, so that's okay-ish. I mean, you don't really want to kind of stick around with archers with no armor because they can just get killed way easier, even by other archers or horse archers. So keep these things in mind. So fighting the Wolfskins, getting these guys in your faction is really great because they've got really great bow skill, and they're going to be very fast because they've got near no armor on and 120 athletics. So they can actually just track star around the battlefield very, very easily. On to the Forest People Minor Clan. We get the Sprout, Sapling, and Arboreal. We talked about them during our section for the Brotherhood of the Wood, and they are, in my opinion, a comparable, if not better, archer. You do lose out on a stack of barbed arrows, but you trade off with better armor, which I kind of like a little bit more. Your bow is a little bit less too, so I think honestly you could kind of jump between both of them and be just fine, but it's a nice way to get archers into your Volandian military or archers into your Britannian military, depending upon which one you can pull into your military. And they're just fine tier 4 archers. Just like the Wolfskins are great tier 4 archers, these guys are a little bit less in quality, but you get a little bit more survivability, which oftentimes can be better than that skill increase. That doesn't necessarily always equate to more damage, but 30 skill is a pretty significant increase in the amount of damage an archer gets. But when you're splitting the hairs between these guys and the Foresters, I would almost always go with Arboreals. Sturgia might not have the best military, but it has really good minor clans. So the Skolder recruit into Warrior Brota, I think it's actually Brotha, into the Veteran, we get a really sick unit. It has 110 one-handed and polearm, 100 throwing, and 60 two-handed. It is definitely a jack of all trades here. It's got a two-handed axe. It's got a great shield. It's got a broad blade javelin, which is very nice, and a long war sword. It's got a very nice set of weaponry across each of its sets. And honestly, they're just really sick looking. You're basically getting a Sturgian Spearman with 10 more one-handed and polearm. You're getting throwing added into the mix. You do have 60 athletics, which isn't amazing, but with the way that engage works now, the unit will all stay in tow. So if you have them all in shield wall and press engage, they'll all go as fast as the slowest unit can. It used to be in times past, if you told them to charge or engage, they would just kind of run at max speed and the unit cohesion would be out of the window. So if you want to add in some really great throwing units into a really strong Sturgian front line, I think that the Skolders here are amazing for the job because they'll be able to throw these really good javelins. And on top of it, they have these two-handed axes, which they can use in sieges and stuff like that. I just think they're a really cool minor clan. And again, the wage is only 8. That's such a huge factor here, is that you're not paying exorbitant fees for units that kind of slot very well into your cultural location of this minor clan. The other Sturgian minor clan is the Lake Rat, and the Lake Rat's pretty sick. You go from the recruit into the veteran, who already starts to get pretty good. The recruit's all right, but the wrecker is great. It's basically the armor of a heavy axeman, but at tier 4 with tier 4 wages and 20 less throwing. So you get a very comparable unit, right? Let's go heavy axe. Or is it veteran axeman? Yeah, here we go. So we got an axeman who has 130 one-handed throwing and athletics. Compare this to the wrecker, who has 110 polearm throwing and 100 one-handed. They used to have polearms. They don't have them anymore, as you can see across all their sets. So they just kind of need to update that polearm skill and put it into athletics. These guys will be very good. Again, with athletics being lower, it is a little bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to, say, sieges and the such. But with how engage works, you can actually keep these guys in tow very well, and it's not as huge. And it's a great way to add in effectively the same use case of an axeman while not having to diverge your Sturgian military line away from the spearman, which I personally find to be a better soldier than the axeman. Some people think the axeman's better, so it depends on however you want to split this hair. So you have basically a minor clan who will provide you with a tier 4 axeman or spearman, depending upon the Skolder or the Wrecker, whichever one you choose, and you can kind of go from there with them. But still, really strong, really great units with great armor across the board here that you have access to in Sturgia. With Khazate, you get the Karakhergit, which are an interesting kind of hybrid soldier that kind of fits more in line with the Khazate noble line than it does with the archer line, because you do have a horse archer character, but the horse archer character gives up an extra stack of arrows for a polearm into the rider, into the elder. Now the elder has comparable stats to let's go to a Khan's guard, and I believe it's the Keshig. Comparable stats to a Keshig. Oh, nope, to a Torgud. That's it. Torgud. That was the one. To a Torgud, but you get not a glaive, which is a swinging polearm. You get the Fine Steel Leaf Spear, which is a stabbing polearm. And your bow is a step war bow. You still have a pretty good charger here, and you have a lot of really great armor. The stitch leather over mail, 36, 14, 14. This is the same thing that the heavy Mamluk has, and at a great 8 wage. So if you want good, another set of horse archers that are better than your horse archers that you get from Khazate by 10 without being part of your noble line, I think that these guys are a really good sub in for your military. They're not going to be one that would replace any horse archers that you would put in. You're not going to go, well, I only want these, unless you specifically want them for any kind of lore reason or something like that. But you do get a really, really solid horse archer here from the Karakhergit. The Beni Zilal are part of the Eleftheroi, and they are a very interesting unit because they have 2 sets of throwing weapons, javelins here. Then they get the jagged spear followed by a flissa, and that's kind of the into the soldier, into the royal guard. And the royal guard is really strong. The other 2, not as much. Their kind of use case as a throwing centric horse unit, more of a skirmish style unit using mainly their throwing weapons, kind of like the brigands for the Sturgians, is interesting because they kind of try to fit the niche of the Eleftheroi Ferris, but the Ferris has a little bit more going for it, right? So we look at the Ferris, they've got a polearm and a shield and a Jareed and a one-handed weapon. And skill set 2 is 100 riding, 70 one-handed, 100 throwing, 110 polearm. Comparing this back here, we're looking at 110 riding, 60 one-handed, 95 throwing, 110 polearm. So you're getting a better, faster polearm and riding character, but you're suffering in throwing, which seems to be the primary focus of the Beni Zilal. With 2 sets of hooked javelins, no shield, and a polearm, it's a very interesting thing. Contrary to that, though, they have got a ton of armor. They've got that stitched leather over mail, which we just took a look at here, or the robe over mail shirt. Both really solid pieces of armor in this unit. So if you do want to kind of bolster the throwing capabilities of your Ferris in an Eleftheroi playthrough, the Beni Zilal make a lot of sense. If you don't necessarily need throwing soldiers, I don't find them to be overly useful in your army. They're still only going to pay that 8 wage, so that there is that going for them. And they have so much armor at tier 4, which is awesome to see. But I think that they fit such a weird kind of spot in the army compared to a Ferris or a dedicated cavalry soldier. It's kind of that weird in between where they don't have a shield, but they have tons of throwing, but they don't have the throwing skill to match up with all of it, like anyone else would at that level. To be fair, you're talking about 5 throwing, which would be comparable to a tier 4 throwing dedicated soldier, which would have 100 throwing. So it's not really that much, but it's just kind of worth noting that they don't have high one-handed. So if they got into a close melee combat situation, they wouldn't be able to kind of pull out. Or pull up. I don't know, but they can't do it. One of the last minor clans to talk about is the Jawwal, and they're insane. The recruits have 180 athletics. They can just chuck these jagged javelins down range, and that's kind of their big focus point, is just throwing tons and tons of javelins. They then can mount onto a camel into the Jawwal Bedouin. Unfortunately, though, I think that they just don't really kind of come off the ground because they don't have really any armor. Their big focus is on trying to be a throwing and polearmed soldier with great skills, 130, 140, 130, with pretty low riding at 80. But I think if the Jawwal Bedouin had an armored camel, which we'll talk about in a second here, or more armored, they would be really cool. From a lore standpoint and where they are in their minor clan description, everything, it makes sense how they are and how they appear. But I think that their overall use case is better served with either something from your standard military in the Eleftheroi or your noble line. And those are the two things I would kind of consider when it comes to this minor clan. Our true last minor clan is the Ghilman. It's the Ghilman. And these guys are really cool. The Coleman isn't anything crazy. He's kind of like that first level Ferris, just kind of has a cool robe and he's on a horse. But the Ghilman is really solid. It's got this long-headed spear, it's got a sword, and it's got a shield, and it's got 60 one-handed, 80 polearm, and 60 riding. It's basically like a knight down there in for the Eleftheroi, even that's what Ferris is. That's what your Ferris is. But then it goes into a Ghilman, and the Ghilman is cool because it hits 100 riding, 90 one-handed, 110 polearm. So the one hand is a little lacking, but you get a really high amount of armor on these guys. Some of the best armor you can get down in the Eleftheroi lands. Great helmet, lowly steel cap, a good set of weaponry because it has a mace on it. The problem is though, it's got a war camel, man, and I want that war camel to be decked out in armor. I want to see cataphract camels in this game. I think the viability of these guys, if you get access to them, they're great for what they do because their armor is just so substantial, and they've got a really cool use case. I think if they do ever add cataphract camels, they will be one of the coolest units in the game, just to see armored camels with armored Azerian knights charging people down. The Ghilman too is, again, for a tier 3 unit with the Gambison over mail armor, it has a ton of armor to take advantage of, and that makes them very, very, very strong in that early portions of your game. And if you kill that minor clan, you get all three of these guys in, remember, in ascending or descending, depending on how you're looking at it, with less Ghilman, more Ghilman, and even more Coleman to take advantage of in your military. So we've talked about the minor clan units and how they can be useful in your military, but how can minor clans be useful to your campaign? And this is how you would take advantage of it. What you want to do is, anytime you fight any minor clan, when they are a part of an opposing army as a mercenary, or if you're just trying to level your renown up or get some good loot, whatever it is, you want to release them. So there's something like deliver my demands, surrender or die, yield or fight. Now send troops, do that fight. And my relation is decreased by from 10, positive 10 to minus 19. So that's of course going to be detrimental, right? But you tell them, hey, you know, you fought well, you're free to go. That increases, my relation is increased by 5 to negative 14 with the forest people. So obviously going to war with them is not going to be the way to keep positive relations. The best way to do that is, of course, not go to war with them. And every time you fight them in another person's army, you release them. Because when you do that, okay, I guess that's not going to work. We'll go to clans, we'll go to minor, we will go to Landia. No. These are the Vakan. When I go to this guy and ask him, once I have my own kingdom and my relation is super positive with this faction, I can go to him and say, hey, want to join my faction? Yeah, sure. What's the sum? And you give him money and he'll come and join your faction. This is why minor clans are so important. If you keep a strong positive relation with them, if you go to war with other factions, other main kingdoms, and you fight them and you release them and you increase your relationship with them, when you go to create your own kingdom and you want to bring more people into your kingdom, they're going to accept in droves because you've already built your entire campaign across making strong relations with them. And that is crucial. This also, it doesn't show it anymore, but it also results in massive gains towards your towards your charm. We just got a ton of charm experience because you get charm experience whenever you release people from captivity. So use those to your advantage. The minor clans are not going to be a boon in your campaign in the early or maybe even the middle portions, but the late game, they are going to be the thing that saves your campaign because they will bolster your kingdom and allow you to fight against the odds. And doing this for any noble, even in the kingdoms that you're fighting against, allows you to pull that noble away from their kingdom. So if you say are part of a Vlandian faction and you're fighting against Stygia and you're attacking their nobles and you win and you release their nobles, you'll build relation with them. And when you create your own kingdom, you can go and have those nobles defect from Stygia and join you. So this is crucial to your success in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord because it is probably the most underestimated portion of the game that no one really talks about, and it's how you maintain the strength of your kingdom in the latter portions of the game. But this concludes our video here on mercenaries, on minor clans. If you have any questions about them, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. I think I'm going to do a video for the bandits on their own because there's a lot to talk about across leadership and stuff like that. This video is already a lot longer than I wanted it to be. But again, let me know in the comment section below if there's anything you wanted to know about the minor clans or about the mercenaries that I didn't cover. I don't think that Flessin or Strat Gaming have a big video on this. And Flessin or Strat, if you guys are listening, please by all means let me know and I will link your video. They always have Strat Gaming, Flessin 19, Lion Exodus, Jackie Fish. All of these gentlemen have great videos on Bannerlord, so please make sure you are checking out the other Bannerlord bros out there, the Butter Bros, because we have tons of content creators covering a lot of really great content on Bannerlord all across YouTube. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.